There we go. Shaping and building the post-pandemic workplace. It's a webinar and it's a workshop. The idea is that Peter is going to be talking to us for about half an hour, and I've just been talking to Peter. He'd like it to be a question and answer as much as possible. He'll open with some thoughts, but look, let's participate in this webinar. Let's not just sit and receive. Let's get involved. And I was saying to Peter, I said by email, I've been running some lectures at City University and had about 90 engineering students who do a people management module, and everyone's sitting there with their picture gone, no on mute. And I've been doing everything I can to try and get people to engage. But obviously we're a more mature and experienced audience, so I think it'd be great if we can participate. The second part of this webinar is a workshop. We're going to break you into groups. They'll be facilitated, and it'll give you a chance to think through some of the issues that come out of this presentation. So in terms of format, in a couple of moments, Peter will be speaking. As I say, we've got about a half an hour with Peter. Then we'll have a couple of minutes just framing the conversation before we break out. Then we will break out into groups. And then we'll pull together and get some feedback and some insights from those groups, summary and wrap up. So that's our format for today. Just to say, we are recording this. We're recording a bit with Peter. So if you really don't want to be on a screen somewhere and be seen on a video on YouTube, then either don't put your picture up when you speak, or if you don't want to participate and be seen, that's fine by us. But just be aware that we are recording. We're recording this today, and the piece with Peter and the Q&A will be on there. About Leadenhall Consulting, I've seen a lot of familiar names as the room has been building. So many of you know who we are and what we do. But we celebrated our 9th birthday this week, and next year will be our 10th birthday. So we're looking forward to hopefully a physical celebration. We've now got 40 associate coaches and consultants in the UK, Europe. We've now got somebody in the US, Asia, and Australia. And we're serving clients originally in the financial services business, but now across the private, public, and third sectors. And we do coaching, we do consulting, and we do leadership development. And this year has been a big year for us. We launched Coaching on Demand, which is our online platform. And just to say that Liz Codd leads our coaching practice. Liz, I don't know if you want to just say a very, very quick hello.
Yes, a quick hello from me.
Okay, and then I'm going to go straight on to Randall, who leads the consulting practice.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining, and you'll be able to hear from me probably in the coming weeks as we build up the consulting practice.
Cool. So that's Liz and Randall, and they'll be in the facilitation groups. So as we do that. This slide I almost felt was unnecessary, in the sense that if you think about it, we've all experienced this. We've had a very difficult year. We've been very focused on managing business as it is. Some industries have been decimated, some are booming. Most of us are somewhere in between. One of the things I have noticed, and particularly with the coaches globally, when you talk to different coaches in different locations from Sydney, Shanghai, Switzerland, UK, US, we're all experiencing this in a very different way. And, some industries are, some countries are managing this better than others. But the reality is millions of us have been working from home. Millions of people sadly have lost their jobs or in danger of losing their jobs. And the stock market remains volatile. Obviously, it's bounced back recently, but what a year 2020 has been. It's been a long year. But I think the whole point of today, and I'm hoping the reason you guys are here for this workshop, is it's time to look forward. We can't just keep looking at today's issues. We've got to start thinking, how are we going to manage our way back? And we probably thought that we'd be doing this in September or January, but clearly COVID has come back. It's been a more difficult period, and so we're still here. And most of us think we'll be here in it, and looking at our annual anniversary of COVID. But having said that, things will change. The vaccine news is looking encouraging. The V-shaped recovery didn't happen, but let's face it, there will be a recovery. I mean, we've seen recessions and recoveries before, but it's clearly going to be tough. And I suppose that the big thing for all of us, and this is the thing we're all grappling with, is the economic, technological, and social landscape has been redrawn. We don't know how much. And if you look at the picture on the bottom of the slide, is it the green grass or is it the clouds and the lightning? What is the future and where are we going? And there will be winners and losers. I'm seeing it as quite a bit of a white collar revolution. In fact, white collar people are the ones who are working from home and have had a different experience perhaps from those in either services or in factories. Those were the place to go. And obviously for those in certain industries like hospitality, they've been losing jobs. So, the world is going to be different. The question is how different. And the question is, are we going to go back to the old way of working, or are we going to go forward to a new way of working? And we've got a recession in the background too. So it's a very interesting set of circumstances. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come out of the slideshow, and I'm going to put Peter on. I'm hoping that everybody can see Peter. Over to you, Peter, and see how we get on.
Thank you, Chris, and good evening to all of you. It's great to be here. Chris and I think, first met quite a number of years ago in various forums, City HR, and then we're both on the group around the Guild, the HR Guild. So we interact quite a lot, and I always enjoy our interactions and discussions. So when you invited me to come and talk to you all, I'm very happy to do it. And I'm assuming also, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but we've got quite a mixed audience in terms of backgrounds and positions and roles. I mean, we're not all HR people, right?
Primarily HR, but consultants, and obviously various other disciplines, fund management, insurance, that kind of background. So there's a whole range of people with different backgrounds, but I would guess that about 50% of people have got an HR background.
Okay, fantastic. And just a sort of brief word of introduction myself. So I've been the chief executive of the CIPD, so the professional body for HR and people development, for, it's always a bit scary when I say it now, but just over 8 years. I had a very long professional career in consulting. Spent 30 years at Accenture, which you're probably adding it up makes me about 97, but I started very young. But I had 30 years at Accenture. My last 7 or 8 years there were running their global practice in all of the people side of business, leadership and org strategy, HR, and this has always been my passion, the people side of business. And so just sort of by way of some introductory remarks, and as Chris said, it'd be great, I mean, just to engage perhaps in everybody's thoughts on this, because we are, without doubt, in era-defining times. I think there's no doubt about that at all. I think we will all look back on this time in years to come and say, this was a time of profound change. And the longer this pandemic has gone on, the more I believe that to be true. If you remember in the first lockdown, it all sort of felt, well, we'll just get through this, and then people using expressions like snap back. In other words, we'd all go back to what we were doing before. A lot of rhetoric about, oh, well, we all need to get back to our offices because that's where we're productive. And actually, the more that's gone on, the more I strongly believe that this is a time of real and profound change. And it is building on many, many ideas that we've had about the world of work and paradigms that we've had about the world of work that frankly needed to change. And really obvious ones are things like our patterns of work, where we've had this traditional paradigm of standard hours of working weeks, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, we all commute and do all these crazy things. And we've done that pretty much since Henry T. Ford decided that the way to run a business was to run it for 5 days a week and have 8-hour working days. Interestingly, just parenthetically, in what he was trying to describe there, interestingly, was a change in the world of work to give people more time off, to pay them properly, a living wage, so they could live a reasonable life and ultimately afford to buy his cars. And that was his principle, right? But if you look at all the intervening years, and indeed, if I even look back on the history of the CIPD 100 years ago, it started out as the Welfare Workers Association just over 100 years ago. And companies like Roundtree and Cadbury's and Lever Brothers are all still with us. And it was built on those principles that it's people at the heart of business. And if I look after my people, they will look after my business, they'll look after my customers and do the things we want them to do. And I really think that in a lot of the intervening years, we forgot a lot of that. And we even invented these expressions of human resources and things like that, which a lot of people have commented on recently and say, human resources, yeah, that keeps reminding us that people are costs, not real people. So, as I said, there have been a lot of trends about how we shift some of the paradigms of working, how we create more flexibility in terms of how we work, how we create organizational cultures that are more agile and responsive, how we create organizational cultures that are truly inclusive, because that's what we need to fill all the skill gaps, as well as have organizations that are reflective of the societies and communities we're part of, and of course of the customers that we serve. And then we come into this pandemic. And first and foremost, it is a human pandemic. And I've talked to so many business leaders and HR leaders since the very start of this who said, oh my goodness, this is such a wake-up call for us. We are putting people at the very front and center of our thinking. Because if we do not look after our people in this context, we won't have a business at the other end of it. No matter whether we're going to be a V-shaped, U-shaped, W-shaped, L-shaped recoveries, we must look after our people. So what's been very heartening, I think, in the response in so many ways, what I'm hearing so much, is that this really is signaling a big shift in our corporate thinking about putting people at the front of our business agendas. And then what's also then emerged is that different styles of leadership. And it's fascinating. I mean, if I joined this Zoom call, I wouldn't know who the leader was, right? All these symbols that we surround ourselves as leaders in a normal circumstance have all suddenly disappeared. We're all staring into each other's living room. We, in other words, paradoxically, even though we're all interacting remotely, paradoxically, it creates a more human connection. And that's being evidenced increasingly by surveys we do and others, which are saying that many, many businesses now see that the connections with their people is stronger than it's ever been, that some of the cultural ties between us as organizations is stronger, no matter what. And we do read these things. I've read too many leaders of what I describe as the old school who say, well, we have to get back to our offices because that's the only way to be productive. Or I was talking to a journalist last week who said, what did I think about the idea that the reason we needed to get back to our offices is because that's where innovation happens, around the so-called water cooler moments. And I said, to be honest, if that is the only thing driving innovation in your business, you got far bigger problems to worry about. It's about whether you're going to go back to the office or not, right? And yet that's what we've seen. I'm sure you've seen it in your businesses, that actually we've had to be agile, we've had to respond, we've had to innovate. And many, many people are saying we've done things in weeks that would have taken us years to do before. So there's so many paradoxes in this, because we often think that these ways of interacting we could not have imagined before, and yet we have, I think, driven many, many positive things. And I'll give you another data point just to illustrate the point I mean about culture. One of the big engagement survey firms, a firm called Peakon, which some of you may be familiar with, recently altered their benchmarks. So like a lot of these firms, they're benchmarks, and we all try to get into the top quartile of engagement based on their benchmarks. They adjusted the top quartile, or the quartile measures, up, because what they've been observing from companies everywhere, interestingly, again, somewhat paradoxically, is that engagement had been improving. And it's been improving because we spent more time and more effort communicating with our people, looking after their well-being, trying to support each other, and asking them questions when we say, how are you today? Not just saying, well, that was a cold form of greeting. No, how are you really today? And what more can I do to support you? And that to me is humanity at work. And that's something, as I said, if I had to isolate so much of this debate over the years, it's about putting the human back into organizations. And to be honest, as some of you may have even heard me say, it's about putting the human back into human resources as well. And recognizing that if we look after our people, if we support their well-being, if we create open and sharing cultures, if we have trust, and if we create true inclusion and give people voice, we will not only engage our people better, they'll be more productive, their well-being will be stronger, will be a more attractive place for people to work. So just a couple other quick thoughts and I'm really interested in opening it up. I think so. That's sort of looking at it organizationally and all this sort of cultural and people dynamics. But as I said, other things I think are really interesting now as we look ahead. So what will we, to use the phrase, build back better? What will we learn from this? And I would say centrally and most importantly is everything I just said. We can't forget these things. These must be things that would drive our future in every organization. But of course, also other things that I'm hearing that people are talking about a lot is this will accelerate innovation and particularly technology adoption in our organizations everywhere. Because I'm guessing most of you in the UK, UK-based businesses, it's incredible when you look at the UK, we are behind, we are laggards in things like technology investment into the workplace. Now, we could debate why that is, and I've got a lot of theories as to why that is, some of which, interestingly, related to migration and Brexit. But nonetheless, the fact that is a fact. And so I'm hearing a lot more about people saying, you know, we've really got to accelerate innovation with technology. We've also got to think much more strategically about the kind of workforce and capabilities we're going to need in the future. Strategic workforce planning, which is a really, really important part of business strategy. It's not just HR stuff. This is absolutely a central pillar of any business strategy, which is to look ahead and say, so what capabilities will we need? How's the business model evolving? What are we going to be doing differently? And a little thing that I talk about when you think about strategic workforce planning is you've got to decide, are you going to buy, build, borrow, or bot? You're going to buy in the skills, you're going to recruit them, you're going to develop them, build, you're going to borrow them, you're going to contract or partner, and thinking much more strategically about that. What are your core competencies and what can you do with others? Or are you going to automate? Now, those are big, big questions that we're looking at now. And then, of course, linked to that is restructuring. So, you know, I'm doubtless many of you on the call will be in that phase as well, really saying, look, we've got to restructure, maybe for economic reasons and cost reasons, but actually many people saying this is also an opportunity to really understand our business in a different way, think about our operating models in a different way, thinking about where and how we use office space in a very, very different way, and in using office space in a different way to have more networked offices, perhaps up and down the country, I could access skills and talent in very different ways. And that's really exciting too, because that allows us to spread economic wealth and opportunity across the country in much, much different ways. So those are all very, very strategic pillars of what needs to come together into overall, you could call it strategic workforce planning or people strategy or whatever, but absolutely thinking through all these dimensions of the skills and capabilities. Where do I get them from? What do my workplaces look like, having learned that we can work differently? Giving people choice, which is what they are demanding. They're demanding now that we have choice in how and where we work, and how to embrace that idea to build truly inclusive cultures and give people more choice and give people more voice. And the final thing I would say in all of this, to Chris's important point about white collar, we must not forget that we have, in many cases, not in all cases, but in most cases, we have a very diverse workforce in terms of essential workers on the front line. And then we got, as Chris said, the sort of white collar workers in their offices. And I've talked to a lot of business leaders who forget that and say, well, isn't it marvelous? I'm working from home and I get my cups of tea all the time and I got my office space. There are many, many people. It's not just people who have to be in an office to be, you know, looking after retail operations or whatever it might be. It is also many people in our organizations who are working from home who are finding this damn hard. And we have to respect and understand that as well, which is back to giving people voice and giving people choice. But I think, yeah, just to close off, going back to what I said at the beginning, this is an era-defining moment. This is an opportunity for us to step up, particularly as a profession in HR, which has been very much at the center of so much of this debate, and help to change organizations for the better, to create more responsible businesses that look after their people better, are more engaged with society and inclusion and all of those ideas, not just because it's politically correct, but because it's good for business. And this is our time and opportunity, and we really need to take it, because I think business, and many of us in all functions, have not always earned the confidence of everybody. You look at things like Edelman's Trust Barometer, if you're familiar with that, and trust in the establishment of big business has been eroding over many years. This is our chance to reset, and this is our chance to create truly inclusive cultures and organizations that are good for people, and good for their well-being. And if we do that, we will create sustainable businesses for the future. And I can't think of a bigger calling, a bigger purpose. We're all talking about purpose much more as well than that. And I think that's exciting. And without being crass about this pandemic, because it's been truly awful for so many people, I'll leave you with that famous Winston Churchill quote, which has been used many, many times since, which is, don't let a good crisis go to waste. And this crisis is a trigger point, I think, for some really, really important change in how we think about work and how we engage with our people and build responsible and sustainable businesses for the future. So let me leave it there, Chris, and let's get a bit of a chat and discussion.
Well, I've been scribbling down notes like mad. I like your rhyming things and your alliteration. That's really helpful. I'm gonna pinch some of that up for my next presentation. Right, yeah, guys, let's have some questions for Peter while we've got him. I think this is a great opportunity. So feel free to speak up, to unmute yourself and join in. We will look at the chat as well.
Chris, I'm watching the chat as well, so I can see Malika's put up an interesting question there. Who do we think is doing this well? Well, who out of you would want to volunteer? Because people are doing this in all sorts of ways. I wouldn't want to particularly pick one organization, so you should look at them, or even one sector. I think there are fantastic examples everywhere of organizations stepping up, but I'd love to hear one or two stories from some of you, because I know you'll be doing some great things.
Okay, I know there's some great people on this call, so I'm going to, so Peter Walmsley, I bet you're out there somewhere watching this, probably doing some typing at the same time. Peter, why don't you chip in here and give us your views?
You know what, Chris? I knew you were going to do that. I absolutely knew. For those of you who don't know, my name's Peter Walmsley. I'm the Chief People Officer for GSN Games based in Boston. And I had the pleasure or not of working for Chris for a number of years. So I knew damn well that he was going to pick on me. Yeah, like many of you, we're a games company. We design and produce social and casino games. So our businesses have been phenomenally successful during the last few months, as you can imagine. We pivoted to work from home within a 24 hours, as a lot of people have done, and have maintained that throughout. And we don't plan in any of our locations to even consider going back to work back into the office until January at the earliest. But what it's actually forcing us to do is to really think about what role the office will play in the future, which is, I like the questions that you raised there, Peter. So what we're actually saying is the office will no longer be a place where you have a relationship with your desk. It will be there as an extension of work. So I can see a model where we will have flexibility for people to work from home 2 or 3, 4 days a week. But when there's a need for people to come together for whatever specific reason on a project, or they need to brainstorm together, whatever it might be, then the office will be redesigned in a sense to be very open plan, screens, things up on the wall to actually help people be creative in that moment without it being somewhere that they need to be from 8 till 6, 9 till 5, etc. And so it changes the whole look and feel of what an office looks like and helps us to rethink our real estate strategy on that. And I would say in most of our offices, that's going to be a good model going forward. Interestingly, you've got to put the cultural overlay on that. And in some locations where we're based, is people absolutely want to get back in the office because they need the social element. So, without trying to say one size fits all, we will probably have a variation on the model, but the core will be more flexibility. And actually what we're seeing in places like Boston and London is people moving further out of the cities. So, because they know in future, they can work from home, in Yorkshire or out in the wilds of Massachusetts, and know that they're only required to come into the office 1 or 2 days a week. So it's changing their life as well, and that's having a positive benefit. So yeah, we're really rethinking that, and that's where I see us going for the future. And I think your earlier point about employees demanding that, without them actually saying that's what they want, that is actually what they want. And to have a greater balance in their lives, to give their best to work, but give their best to their their life outside of work, if that helps.
And no, it's great, Peter. I mean, in your world, games designers, presumably there's quite a lot of collaboration. They sort of co-design, co-work together, right? So,
Yes.
so in
Yes.
an environment sorry?
I said yes. I said yes.
So in an environment where obviously for the time being, I know you're in a slightly different place in Boston at the moment, but the people working from home, how have you found productivity and collaboration? Because there's been a lot of debate again about has productivity been affected, and most people you ask say no, actually arguably I'm probably more productive.
Yeah,
Has that been your experience?
Yes, I would say we're being more productive. People are collaborating probably more than they were before, because they know they have to, and there is only one way in which they can do it, which is through the medium that we're currently using. But it's interesting, we have 230 people in Bangalore, and typically on average, people will be traveling for up to 3 hours a day. All of a sudden, you've got an extra 3 hours. People are actually working longer hours, and that's the actual counterbalance is how do we stop people from working all the time? You've got to do that. And what we're finding in India is 40% of our workforce have relocated out of Bangalore to their hometown. And the business has not suffered at all. So all the things of creativity, delivering, for each phase of the game design and development is happening. And so productivity for us is definitely up.
Yeah, it's a great story, and thank you for sharing that. I mean, I think it's interesting reading some of the comments too about Mina's comments about will be winners and losers, which is true. I mean, obviously economically, whenever in a recession there are sadly people who will lose out. I think one of the interesting questions about the economy at the moment, which Chris touched on as well, is it's very variable what's happening. I mean, Peter, you described your business doing well, and I'm not surprised given the nature of the business, but obviously hospitality sector, transportation is really struggling. And one of the things we've got to be better at is looking at people crossing sectors, because often, we use that as one of our sort criteria in recruitment. Say, what's your experience in the sector? And we need to, see it as an opportunity, because I think you bring diversity of experience if you bring in people from outside the sector. And some of you may be working in financial services. I think, if I'm honest, financial services is one of those sectors in particular that said you can't work here unless you've really worked in financial services. And we actually need that external challenge to the ways that we think in particular sectors. So I recognize the point about winners and losers for sure, and we do need to recognize that, and we do need to look after our people when they're moving on. And I'm hearing a lot of some very good programs of work with perhaps the bigger corporates where they've got the resources, but if people are being let go, what are they doing to support them? Giving them job guidance and coaching, or a little bit of upskilling, reskilling, which we might talk about because it's a big subject. So there is some of that going on. I think also this sort of back office, front office idea, which I touched on briefly. This also is really, really important that we understand fairness in all of this, because it's very easy for us to say, great, so we're going to give people choice. Exactly as you said, Peter. Yeah, you can have choice. It's not one size fits all. You can work from home. You can work from the office. But there are people who have to work from a place of work, and we've got to consider how do we balance this fairly for them as well. And my response to that is, we've got to think a little harder about how we create more flexible working options for those people who are working in a physical workplace. We can do that as well. There are lots and lots of examples of it. So that we're trying to show fairness in doing all of this, and not creating a two-tier organization, which I worry about, a lot of people do worry about. So I think it's good observations there as well. Maybe picking on some of the questions here and asking you to sort of talk about them. So Dawn Jackson, you're saying, will the crisis transform societal and organizational culture? I think it's a really interesting challenge. I mean, mate, do you want to just expand on that thought a bit?
So, having worked in corporates for 25 years and also very focused on inclusion and belonging in my business now, I've seen the conversation around we've got to a point where we're really going to nail inclusion, we're really going to nail belonging. It's been a long time coming. I'm actually more skeptical of that, to be honest. I think that there's the pressure to stay as is within big corporates is still overwhelmingly there, and the leadership capability that's required to pivot to a more inclusive, flexible working model is a risk factor for me in enabling this change. So I'm looking for how can we really take this seriously this time? And that to me is about focusing on the right organizations with the right, I guess, intent and adaptability to leverage this. And I'm not sure that's the big corporates. I think it's going to start with the smaller ones.
Yeah, no, it's a very good point, Dawn. Yeah, which is why, as I said, you know, the longer this has gone on, actually it's giving me a bit more confidence that people will see this really is a big change. But in the end, that's why I was asking Peter about productivity, because you're right, there are a lot of skeptical business leaders. After all, you know, most of us have grown up in a world which we're very familiar with. And we're very familiar with sitting in our offices and telling people what to do, and management by walking about and all those sorts of things, right? So part of what I think we have to do is to make sure that we have got the evidence that shows that this actually does work. So hence why I asked Peter about productivity. Now, understanding what do we understand of productivity in this very different way of working? What do we understand of people's engagement in all of this? What do we understand people's views and attitudes are? And what do we understand if we said, well, I'm really sorry, you've all got to go back to the office? How many of them are going to come with us? So at one level, like anything in any cultural change, I think what you're pointing out on is absolutely you have the skeptics, absolutely you have the people, if I'm honest, who are threatened by change because they've always worked in a particular way. And in my experience, one of the best ways and a really important way for us in this context is to build that evidential base that shows that actually not only can this work, it is working positively, and these are the things we should take forward. Recognizing, as Peter said, and I always say, not one size fits all. And that equally means, therefore, there is not one size fits all if some leaders believed it, that we should just go back to doing what we were doing before. Because nobody could prove to me that was working well, as we've just discussed in lots of different ways.
Can I just add one final point just about the societal question? Again, when I've been developing leaders, it's all about, well, we'd love to conform, but the society, that's the way things work. So there's always been a get out clause for leaders. I'm wondering whether we need to focus on societal shift as well as the org culture.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, which is why, when I was talking about responsible business, it's intrigued me, having been in business and consulting for many, many years. Honestly, if we look back on a lot of businesses, I don't think they thought themselves as part of society. I don't think they felt they had that responsibility. I think they felt their responsibility was to their financial stakeholders. There's a great quote by, some of you may know it, by Milton Friedman, the American economist in the 1970s, said the sole purpose of business was to make money. Now, I think that paradigm has shifted dramatically. And to echo your thought on this, Dawn, I mean, a lot of talk now about corporate governance and responsible business and a multi-stakeholder view of the world. And who are our stakeholders? Well, first of all, of course, I'm nobody's denying that making money and being financially sustainable is not important. Of course it is. But we have more responsibilities than just that. We have responsibilities to our employees and all the people that work for us or work through us. We have responsibilities to our customers. We have responsibilities to our suppliers, which is really, really important. We also have responsibilities to the communities of which we are part. And finally, and last and certainly not least, let's not forget we have responsibilities to the environment, which is the other big crisis that's going on. So I think you're right. I think by capturing a lot of these ideas that what is going on in society, the role of business as part of society, and that is to me the essence of responsible business, is it sees itself as part of society, and that it builds on these ideas of therefore demonstrating that it is doing things that are good for society. And that includes, that's why I'm passionate about things like inclusion. How can you say that you're part of society, the communities that you're part of, if you're not recruiting people that represent the societies of which you are a part? So you're right. I think that's also a big part of the shift that's going on. Society is changing, young people having a stronger voice, demanding businesses to be more transparent, demanding the businesses behave responsibly and don't just take all the money and down the hindmost and all of that. And that's why, as I said, I think this is such a profound time for that kind of shift as well.
Peter, can I just go back to the thread a little bit, where people are talking about mental health and people's well-being? Yeah. One of the things that we are factoring into as we return to work, So whilst people are off, we've increased a lot of the health and support that we can give to people through employee programs, give them access to people who can help them from a stress perspective. But one of the things that we really need, or we are doing as we go back, is we will provide the opportunity for those people who, as somebody said, are sitting on their sofa in a flat chair and who need an office. They will be the people, the first sort of 5 or 10% of people who we will invite back, so that they will have the earliest opportunity. We have no critical need for anyone anywhere in the world to be in an office. But what we will do is, for those people who have suffered, and there are obviously quite a number, we will create an opportunity if they need relief from their one bed flat or their flat chair, etc. They'll be in that first tranche before we really do open it up for a higher percentage, so that they've got an outlet and they've got an opportunity to just, you know, have a different environment and look at a different set of walls. And I think that's going to be extremely important, that we acknowledge that their need is greater than my need. And I you know, I'm not bothered if I don't see the inside of an office for a long time, but there are people whose need is greater, and we need to identify those people and make it available. So.
Yeah, no, 100% agree, and I can see lots of supportive comments of the same idea. As I said, it's not, we've all acknowledged, it's not one size fits all.
Absolutely.
But what I find really interesting is it shifts the whole paradigm of what the hell an office is for, doesn't it? You touched on that thought, right? And the fact is that good work, and we know there's some lots of research and evidence. If you think about stress, well, stress, you know, we've done annual researches on well-being through the CIPD for 20 years and seen the growth of stress. Now, stress comes from workload, but it also comes very much from negative relationships, you know, interestingly with your boss, but also with your colleagues. On the positive side, of course, those are the things that help you manage stress. So in an environment where many of us are separated physically from our colleagues, it calls those ideas out. So it's calling out the idea that I don't just turn up to work. I think, as you said, Peter, I don't just turn up to work. I turn up to work to engage and connect, and hence rethinking office spaces to allow that. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, you will have all seen this throughout your careers. You can walk into these great big glass towers with serried ranks of desks of people at their screens, and they're not talking to anybody. They're emailing colleagues 3 desks away. And you think, how have we created a world like that? So I absolutely agree with the commentary that a lot of people are making, that this is a time to completely rethink why we have office space, give people choice about when and how they work in their offices as much as we can, see them as places of social connection, recognize that people have different needs. I mean, for one, I'm a very social person. I must say I do miss the office. I've never worked from home so much. It has some benefits for sure. I know I'm very productive because I'm not, you know, like a session like this, I probably would have to take 2 hours to get to it or whatever. So there are benefits, but we all have these needs. I mean, we are social animals, and it's a very, very important part of what is a construct of what is known as good work, or what creates a positive sense of well-being, is positive social connection. And it's not all physical, but a big part of it is. And then we focus our offices in that way. And I think that's, you know, again, a really exciting idea. Really exciting.
I'm hearing, I don't know if you're hearing it, Peter, and please tell me when you need to go, because I think you're already over the time that we've asked you to speak, but you're welcome to keep going. Because
no, it's my pleasure. I've got to go in about, well, top of the hour is my absolute limit.
Yeah,
I've got another call then. Yeah.
Cool. So the I've noticed Becky Hogan just making the point about this socialization point. There's talk about the hotelization of offices is a phrase being used in the property world, and you know, actually creating these environments where not that you're going to have a bed in it, but you may even have beds in it, but it's actually creating an environment where you go into the building to actually have meetings, to have offsites, to have other types of gathering. But to go back to the office just to do the work you were doing at home isn't the purpose of an office anymore. And yet, and it's going to be very interesting when we go into breakout groups, most of the people here have got offices to go back to. What are you going to do with those offices? Have you really got plans to change them, or are we going to go back gently? It'll be really interesting.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's such an important part of the debate, because it really is talking about our ways of working, but it's understanding what people need from work and connection. A really interesting point about from Graham here about aware of interdependency. wasn't fussed about utilizing the offices, but colleagues benefit from him attending because we're learning from each other. I mean, I've got 2 daughters, well, 3 daughters, as I said at the very beginning of the call, 2 of whom had just started a new job during lockdown. They're saying, this is really hard. I mean, normally I'd be going in there, I could chat to people, I could see what they were doing. So it's about really understanding, I think, 2 or 3 things. One, what is the nature of the work that I carry out? So I've heard a lot of debate, for example, about traders saying that actually, of course they can work remotely, the technology is there, but actually they gain an awful lot when they're working together because all the little eye contacts and little signals they can send to each other. Although, interestingly, I know a lot of traders and a lot of other people are saying, well, I just keep my Zoom on all the time, right? It's not, I do a call when I'm off it. So even for things like that, you can compensate. But anyway, so the point being, what is the nature of work that I do? And understanding where it really does need that sort of connection. What is the nature of my workforce and all the different demographics and different needs and well-being support that we need? And then, yeah, I mean, coming into other ideas about why I need space in terms of and where I have it to access talent. As I said before, I think there's such an opportunity, particularly when you think about the Southeast and this endless debate in the United Kingdom about spreading wealth and economy across the country. And as you said, Chris, people are saying, well, sorry, I might as well live in Yorkshire now. I mean, the housing market's shifted quite a lot. People are saying, well, why would I live in central London? And maybe, just maybe, we will end up that this will be such a big shift that the city of London, when people were saying, and I remember Carolyn Fairbairn, the head of the CBI, saying it in the summer, we all must go back to work because we've got to support all the local businesses in places like the City of London. And I said, with the greatest respect, I'm not going to plan my office strategy on, much as I love Pret a Manger, I'm not planning my office strategy on keeping Pret a Manger going, right? This is about what is the right thing to do for my organization and recognizing, yeah, maybe I do still need a central London office location, but wouldn't it be great if I had a bit more distribution of my office space, which can reduce my costs, but also allow me to attract people in very different ways. Those people have decided now's the time to go and live in Yorkshire, and good on them. So these are, I mean, I think what's interesting about the workplace debate, and this might be a good point for your breakout, Chris, as you said, is it does call out all these questions, right? It calls out the questions about why am I doing it? How do I support people in their well-being? Recognizing all the different people's needs for working environments and how we support that. Recognizing how it can affect our culture. Recognizing how it can create more inclusion. Recognizing how do I create this flexibility where I might have 3 days in and 2 days out and all these sorts of different ideas. So actually it's a sort of central theme for us to really, really think about and challenge about what are we going to do as we come out of this pandemic and changing the way we work. This whole debate about my workplaces, my work schedules, and my work cultures is a very, very central thing to focus on. And it's probably a good place perhaps to let you take it into some of your breakouts.
Just unmuting. That would be great. I think first of all, I'd like to thank Peter and apologize. I had a great introduction for you. I managed to, in my keenness to get you speaking, I forgot to do the full introduction. I think Peter's been great. It's been great to have the interactivity, the chat. We are going to record the chat because there's some fantastic information in that. So I'm clicking save chat right now. Thank you, Peter.
My pleasure.
So thank you for spending the time, and we're now going to get the share screen back up. And thank you, Peter. See you soon.
Well, I'll say cheerio to you all, and good luck. I think this is our opportunity for positive change, isn't it? So good luck, and thank you very much.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you very much, Peter. Cheers. Bye-bye. Okay. And so there is my introduction to Peter. So I'm going to take you through a few slides, guys, before we break into groups. I've already assigned you to groups, so that won't take too long. Some of the issues that I'm not going to repeat some of the points. I've made copious notes, and we will send some information around after this workshop. But some of the things we've already heard from Peter today, things that we're already talking about. Has this change accelerated things that were already happening? Flexible working, use of technology, adoption of new technologies, networks, not hierarchies, gender pay. Is there going to be an impact? Women into leadership. How many couples are having conversations right now about the balance of domestic responsibilities? Is that going to change? and the flexibility of being able to work in different ways. Leadership is going to change. Focus on outputs and results. That was already changing. The gig economy, people working flexibly. So there's a whole bunch of things that are obviously happening. This slide here, I mean, it looks binary, but I think when we break into the groups in a minute, this will be in the background. Are we just going to go back? And I was on a webinar the other day, and there's a guy called Bruce Daisley, who you may have heard of. He wrote the book Eat, Sleep, Work, Repeat. And he was talking to two very similar organizations in the same sector. A newspaper over here, newspaper over here. This newspaper, everyone's going back to work 5 days a week. Thank God we're going back to the old model. This one said, we've been running this, we've not missed a beat. We're staying at home. We're going to go fully virtual. Two very binary solutions to two very different companies. Which company is going to be more successful in the new environment? And what does hybrid mean? What is hybrid? Is it, you know, and we began to explore that with Peter. So let's just go down one more. The other one is, do we believe the hype? So we've just had a very strong case for the world changing. Robin Dunbar at Oxford, he's a professor of experimental psychology. His view is we're overstating the case. You know, people's need to be in the workplace and socialize, those points that have just been made, and the young people wanting to get back into the workplace, the limits of Zoom. Are we really going to change things? And so he's been the counterpoint to the enthusiasts who want to reimagine work. So thank you, everybody. It's been great to see you, and thanks for the participation. It's been really enjoyable to see that you can use Zoom like this to have this level of engagement. So take care, everybody, and thank you very much.